So it's the latest big news in gaming industry. Ubisoft is closing down more studios, including the San Francisco studio that oversaw the development of XDefiant. Unfortunately, it comes at a real human cost when a lot of developers are still being laid off in the past 2 years now of the constant layoffs due to the mismanagement of finances and mismanagement of companies by various developers and publishers. So we're going to kind of go over the news here. XDefiant announced that it is sunsetting. Thank you for your incredible support and dedication to XDefiant. It will start the sunsetting process on December 3rd, but Season 3 will still launch. And for those who purchased the Ultimate Founders Pack, they will receive a full refund. Anyone who's made any purchases within the last 30 days will also be fully refunded. And there's also going to be a personal message from the executive producer of XDefiant, Mark Rubin, who went on a very long spiel about the process of the refund, but also how they wanted to create this new arcade shooter, which turned out to be XDefiant. They were trying to shake up the genre of Call of Duty and the likes by removing SBMM, which is skill-based matchmaking, while bringing back a more old-school arcade shooter experience. But he does acknowledge that they were trying to do this by doing a high-risk, high-reward system of letting it be free to play. Now, as someone who's also played XDefiant, I actually found it enjoyable to a degree, but it didn't really hold my interest. I think part of the reason is because it just had a bad timing to its release. I think it had a bad timing to its release relevant to what other games are coming up. And also the fact that Call of Duty Black Ops 6 has actually been pretty good. If XDefiant had come out during like a low point during Call of Duty, I think it would have held much higher interest initially. I think it would have even retained a lot of that interest. But I think the timing in the marketplace right now for a free-to-play FPS, even without SPMM, is not, unfortunately, sustainable, at least for what they're talking about here. And there's also some worries, at least from my perspective, about what this means for Ubisoft, because Ubisoft has been facing a lot of backlash and worrying concerns from investors over the various layoffs that they've been doing, the various closures that they're doing on some games, and of course that will directly have an effect on potentially like things like Assassin's Creed or Assassin's Creed Shadows, which was delayed to February. And there's this whole like background. In the background, there's like a corporate war, essentially. There's a shareholder war over the future of Ubisoft, whether it should be sold to Tencent or not, which is a problem on its own. And Tom Henderson from Insider Gaming had managed to grab the internal memo about XDefiant's closure and the future of Ubisoft, sent by Yves Guillemot. The Guillemot family is also in this struggle that I mentioned. It seems that they did want to push down the value of the stock intentionally, according to to some of the shareholders who are now contesting Ubisoft's future, to deliberately sell it to Tencent. The internal memo reads, "Hello everyone, it's been some time since I last spoke to you, and I apologize for the silence, especially as the past months have been challenging and unsettling for Ubisoft and likely for each of you. The announcement by Mary Sophie regarding discontinuation of the XDefiant, the closure to San Francisco and Osaka studios, and the ramp down of the Sydney production site is among the difficult decisions we've had to make. To everyone leaving Ubisoft, I want to express my deepest gratitude for the work you have accomplished." Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's the typical kind of like executive or disconnected from reality guy's speech that he's making to these workers that they're laying off. Trying to assure workers that the company is not diving and nosediving, and they are nosediving still. It doesn't seem like they can manage to stabilize. A lot of this might hinge on their upcoming releases and potentially some of the funds being gained from their current releases, but it's not looking good for Ubisoft. It really is not. It just is a whole toxic combination of mismanagement of the corporation itself, and I think just really bad timing. Really is. Let's see. We also have Mary Sophie DeWalbert's internal memo, kind of talking about the same thing here about XDefiant's closure. So that's really it. There's no real answers here if you're a worker for Ubisoft or if you've been laid off. Well, it's just unfortunate. So again, I think it's going to have an adverse effect on the industry as a whole. I think it's just going to lead to potential discontinuation of current development of some projects that's been going on. We have a few more details about the potential acquisition of Kadokawa on behalf of Sony. So Kadokawa Corporation is the parent company from Software, the developers of Elden Ring, Dark Souls, and so on. But Kadokawa Corporation, more importantly, also has intellectual property holdings on things like anime. So this is going to be a very interesting thing. According to an article some time ago, there was speculation that apparently Kadokawa was trying to set the stage for a Sony acquisition by saying, okay, Sony, you got to buy us. Otherwise, South Korea's Kakao Corporation might try to take us over. But down there's like some reports apparently that we'll talk about in a bit in regards to Microsoft potentially getting Kadokawa and of course subsequently from Software. So Bloomberg reported that both Kadokawa and Sony have been going back and forth for a number of years, with just the information popping up right now, with the former wanting Sony to make a full purchase, whereas the latter was only interested in strategic investments in anime and video game IP. Though Bloomberg's report mentions that Microsoft, Tencent, and Kakao have all expressed an interest in Kadokawa, it stopped short of confirming that Kadokawa wanted to fight off a foreign entity in favor of its fellow Japanese group, Sony. Right. Established in 1945, Kadokawa is an anime powerhouse with a library of over 100,000 novels and comics. Now, my first thought when I saw this was, for anime, of course, that's a huge deal. But or even for the literature that Kadokawa has rights to, it's a huge deal. But also, I think in terms of gaming, it could introduce similar problems for especially PC gamers, where Sony would force people to make PSN accounts, which was a huge deal, a huge fiasco for Helldivers 2, where essentially Sony as a publisher kind of screwed over the developers. So I think that is certainly going to be a concern, especially when it comes to the accessibility to games. Something certainly that we should keep an eye on as we talk about the market in regards to Kadokawa's potential acquisition from Sony. Not that it's anything that's decided yet, but we do have some more additional information from additionally we have some more information that it seems like Sony is primarily interested in the from Software, at least as far as gaming goes, right? Journalists have estimated that a third of Kadokawa's value is made up by From Software head Hidetaka Miyazaki. Of course, this is a metaphor, but here's a great deal of truth. Microsoft has been confirmed to be interested in buying Kadokawa, and not because of the advertising agency. So now we're going to see a potential standoff again between Microsoft and Sony, when we kind of went through all this again, where these bigger titans of the gaming industry are kind of like fighting over which studios, which companies to essentially purchase and buy out. And of course, I think there's a bit more of a concern, at least for me as a consumer, when it comes to Sony acquiring Kadokawa or From Software, where I think Sony tends to make its IPs a bit more exclusive, a lot more exclusive than Microsoft has been doing so far for its IPs. I think Microsoft, at least, I'm not saying they're not consumer friendly or even like developer friendly at all, comparatively, but like I think Microsoft is more interested in just making more money through more channels, and that's why they have less. Sorry, more thunder. That's why they have a less of an interest in keeping a lot of their IPs non-exclusive. So of course they're not saying that they don't have exclusive IPs, but I think I would be more concerned as a consumer by Sony. But honestly, objectively, between Microsoft and Sony, I wouldn't want either of them to acquire Kadokawa or From Software. I think there's a danger in trying to in consolidating most of the world's creative industry, or a lot of the world's creative industry, under like one or two banners. I think we've seen the fallout, especially in the human cost for a lot of developers and workers from the ABK acquisition on Microsoft. I mean, these companies are acquiring things, really mismanaging, funds and corporations to the point like people are getting laid off. I don't know if there's going to be a winner here, ultimately, for either the consumer or the actual worker themselves. But it's interesting to at least keep an eye on the corporate world of the gaming industry. Am I streaming later tomorrow? Yes.